Hello and welcome back to the Double Bonus Show. My name is Jacob and it is officially conference prediction time. We are five days away from the start of the college basketball season. So I thought I'd do all five of the power conferences, do predictions, and count down the days. We got ACC today. We'll do Big 10, Big 12, Big East, and SEC. Start with the ACC. I'm basically just going to do conference predictions. I'm going to do top five teams, maybe a sleeper team in each conference, who I think, conference player of the year is going to be, at least in some of these conferences. Maybe a couple of teams that I think make it, how many bids do I think that this team is going to have, or that this league is going to have, things like that. We'll start with general standing predictions. I'm going to do top five plus a sleeper. A lot of these teams have 18 conferences. I don't need these videos to be 50 minutes of me talking about every single team and every single conference and the ACC has 18 teams now, so I don't think I need to do 18, talk about 18 different teams during this. So we'll start at number one, which I think is pretty obviously going to be the Duke Blue Devils. I just think that they have the most talented roster. I think that they're coming in with the best chance to be at the top of this conference. I think this conference is a little bit weaker than it is normally. I think that this is a little bit of a weaker year for the ACC. I think that this is a year that Duke is going to be way out in front, and I just don't know how many teams after that are going to be super strong. The ACC usually has a lot of powerhouses, and I don't know what we're going to see this year from this conference. We obviously have Cooper Flagg, Caleb Foster, Tyrese Proctor being the big three of this team. We talked about Duke in episode 1 of this when we did our top 25 preview. It comes down to what Cooper Flagg looks like, but the rest of this roster with experience at guard and potentially the guy who's going to be the number 1 overall pick, I think it's pretty obviously Duke who's number 1. Number 2 is a team that I think will lean on a ton of experience and a team that, again, has a chance to be not 1A, 1B with the Blue Devils, but they're going to be another step above, I think, the rest of this conference, and that is the North Carolina Tar Heels. Elliott Kadu, RJ Davis, Cade Tyson, in my opinion, kind of lead the way. There's a couple of other good players there. They have a player of the year candidate in RJ Davis. Seth Trimble off the bench is a nice player. I've seen a lot of Elliott Kadu in the preseason looking a lot better. Last year he was young. His shot was not falling as much. The ability to be a true point guard is there for him. He's a good passer. He sees the game well, and he's only going to get better in his sophomore season. Remember, he only averaged 7 points a game last year, 4 assists, but had his moments where it looked like he could be a really, really good guard. It is a tough task to be a freshman point guard on a team like this when you're not a scorer. It's easier to be a scorer if your shot's not falling and you can't figure that out. It's a little bit tougher to make your impact for a team. And I think Kadu's going to have a much bigger impact this year if the shot keeps falling and he still has that good court vision. I think that this North Carolina team has a chance to be really good. They are number 2. They're number 9 in the AP poll coming in, so nobody's surprised that they're going to be there's a chance that they're this good. But again, I don't know about the strength of this conference, but I think these two teams at the top have a chance to sort of run away with it a little bit. And that's a little bit sad for a conference that used to have so much talent when you consider how good some Virginia teams used to be and how good Florida State teams used to be and how good Louisville used to be and how good Syracuse used to be. This conference is not the same as it used to be. Number 3, I have the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. This is a crapshoot from 3 to probably 7. I think Wake Forest has the best combination of talent of the rest of these teams. I really like Salas and Hildreth as a duo. I like bringing in Tyler Johnson, the transfer from Louisville. There's some pieces on this team that could do well. And in a conference that's seemingly wide open and seemingly doesn't have a ton of teams behind Duke and NC. If you're Wake Forest and you rattle off some wins, if you just keep beating the teams in your conference that you're supposed to beat, they have a favorable schedule at the beginning. They're going to play teams like Michigan. They play at Xavier. They'll play Florida. They play A&M. Like if those are teams that you play at the beginning of the season, there's a chance that they could compete for a tournament berth, but I think they're going to finish third in this conference anyways, and you never know what that could look like if you start rattling off wins in conference. It's going to be hard for the committee to not put you in the tournament. The ACC is probably going to be more than a 3-bid league. It's just a question of which of those teams are going to make the step, and I really, really like where Wake Forest is at. At number 4, I have a surprise team, a team that I think is going to be very controversial going into the season. A lot of people are going to be higher on them than everybody else. There's going to be a lot of people that just don't believe in this team. It's going to be a very, very interesting team, and I'm going with the Miami Hurricanes. Now, this is very, very much contingent, if that's the right word. There's a lot of this rides on how long Matthew Cleveland is injured for. If he can come back and be healthy and be the player that he was last year, transferred in from Florida State last season. But a lot of this relies on what you get from Matthew Cleveland. Does Nigel Pack have a little bit more of a bounce back this year? And it also rides a lot on what are you getting from a freshman point guard in Jaleel Buffett. There's a lot of question marks about this Miami team, but I'm going to be bullish and I'm going to believe in them because I look at the roster and I see Pack, I see Cleveland, AJ Stanton-McCoy, the transfer from Samford. I like the roster and I like the ability to score and what they bring to the table in a conference that I just don't know where else to go. I just don't know who else is really good. And a team like that could surprise. And again, all you have to do is start winning games in a conference that not a lot of people believe is very talented. And all of a sudden, you finish in the 4th spot in the conference. You take a look at what Miami has in the non-con. They have Arkansas and Tennessee. 2 games against SEC teams that are going to be a huge showcase for what Miami can actually be. If they go there and they get blown out, then we just know they're not very good. If they go into those games and at least compete, I think we'll have an idea of what this team could look like. There's not a lot else non-con for them. They're going to have to probably get a lot of done in ACC play. At Drake is their next best non-conference game. There's not a ton there. But for Miami, it's more about what can you do against a weaker conference. And I'm going to say that about every team that we talk about in the ACC because it's just such an interesting conference this year because it's not even top heavy. It's 2 teams and everybody else. And I like where Miami sits. I think they have an opportunity to win some games in conference and just be the 4 seed because they're a little bit better than everybody else. It pains me to leave Virginia off the list, but with the head coach situation over in Virginia, I just don't know what we're going to see from that team. And for that reason, at number 5, I have the Clemson Tigers. Lost Hunter Tyson, but they bring back a ton of pretty good talent. Chase Hunter, Ian Schifflin is back, Chauncey Wiggins is back, Jaden Zachary comes over from Boston College, Victor Locken comes over from Cincinnati. It's an interesting roster. There's talent on it. I like Locken. He was nice at Cincinnati. I think their front court's going to be really good with Locken and Schifflin. We'll see what their guard play looks like. I think you're expecting another jump from Chase Hunter this year. He averaged 13 points a game last year for the Tigers. So you're expecting some jumps. The question for Clemson is really just, do all of those players take the jump that you expect them to? And I think that if they do, this team could even be better than 5th. They're well coached, and they always seem to just have a little bit extra in Clemson. They always play hard. They always win big games. It's an interesting non-conference again because there's just not really a lot going on. You're Memphis, you're home against Kentucky, and you're at South Carolina are the big ones. Boise State is an interesting one. You're going to go to Boise and play there. That could be a quad 2 quad 1 game potentially, an interesting one. They're at San Francisco. These are not pushover away games early in the season for Clemson. So I think we're going to learn a lot about them early. I think they're going to be well coached. And I think the question is, how big of a jump are guys like Chase Hunter going to make? And if there's a significant jump and he can be the go-to scorer with Shiflin and Locken down low, this could be a really interesting team. I'm not going to be as high on Clemson as I am on Miami or Wake Forest or any of those teams, but I really think that this Clemson team is going to be interesting. Some teams that just missed the cut, Virginia, obviously, and Pitt. Those are the big two that missed the cut. I always love watching Pitt play. They're always so much fun. I don't know what they're going to look like this year. They lost so much coming off of last season, but Pitt basketball is always something I enjoy, so I'm hoping to see them again. My sleeper team, I have two, but I think Louisville is going to be a lot of people's obvious answer. I want to go with Notre Dame, man. I really, really believe in Notre Dame. And the reason I believe in Notre Dame is because of Marcus Burton and Braden Shrewsbury and head coach Micah Shrewsbury, who made an interesting decision 2 years ago to go from Penn State to Notre Dame, where I don't know if that's a better job. I guess technically Notre Dame basketball is better than Penn State basketball. It's a sort of a lateral move, but not really. Point being, he is a good coach. And if you watched Notre Dame last year, you would kind of know why I would be believing in this team. Projected to finish 10th in the ACC coaches poll at the beginning of the season, or preseason poll, however, I don't know who votes for it. I didn't read who votes for it, but they're projected to finish 10th. And Shrewsbury and Burton could really take this team. Burton averaged 17.5 last year as a freshman. 17.5 points per game and 4 assists as a freshman. Shrewsbury in his freshman season averaged 10 and 2 rebounds. These two dudes are young. They've now got a year under their belt. They've got experience in this system, and they already are playing well. They play well off each other. They're very good players. They've done a nice job. They do a nice job. They have good chemistry, and they're going to play well together. They bring in Matt Aloko from a good Princeton team last year, 13 points out of him. Tay Davis, who was with Notre Dame last year, could be like a 10-6 guy for them at power forward. There's nothing to sneeze at there. And then Keba Iji, who was there last year as well, another kid who was young, didn't have a lot of experience, but another guy who he's a defensive presence underneath, probably going to average like 5, and he averaged 5 and 5 last year. We'll give it to him. Probably just a defender, a guy to anchor the post. But for me with Notre Dame, it's these two guards. If Marcus Burton makes another jump and Braden Shrewsbury makes if Marcus Burton can make a jump from 17.5 to 19 and 5, and Shrewsbury can make the jump to like 12 and 2 assists and 4 rebounds, I think this team's in a really interesting spot. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to be gritty. They're going to score. And they're going to be coached really, really hard by Micah Shrewsbury. They're going to be sort of my darling in the ACC. They're going to be a team that I watch and I root for a ton in this conference. Let's get down to how many bids are going to be in this league. I think that there are 3. I think that you could say right now that they're probably going to get 4 or 5. You're going to get Duke. They're probably going to get North Carolina. I think they're going to get Wake Forest. I think they're going to get Clemson. And then Miami, Pitt, Louisville, Virginia, Notre Dame, a whole host of those schools are going to be, they're going to be in the mix. The question for this conference is just how deep are you, and how many of these teams near the bottom or the middle are going to cannibalize each other and start, one team wins on the road, one team wins at home, and they just cannibalize each other, and there's too many losses to go around. It's going to come down to the non-conference and a lot of these teams. It's going to come down to, can you get that win in that tournament that you play in, or can you get that win against the SEC in the game that you play against them? So there are interesting games up and down the schedule. Notre Dame has just an absolutely brutal schedule. There's a 5-game stretch: Rutgers, Houston, Bama, Georgia, Syracuse. A lot of people are higher on Georgia than I am, so that'll be interesting. But you got Rutgers, Houston, Bama. You've got to go, if you're Notre Dame, go get one of those. And if you can go get one of those, then you're really going to show people that you're a good team. At Georgetown is an interesting matchup. You're better than them. You better go win that game. This is an interesting team, and this will be a really interesting conference. For me, like I said, I think we have 4 guarantees. I would say that this team gets 6 or less as of right now bids. I think up to the 6th team. Now, whether that's Pitt, whether that's Virginia, whether that's Louisville, whether that's Notre Dame, whether that's even if Miami gets to 6, I think that this team is probably, as of right now, a 6-bid league, but it could be less. It could be a couple more. I'd feel like 6 is their absolute ceiling. I don't want to say absolute. 6 right now is their ceiling. Their floor is 2, 3, just because we don't know. So I'd say that right now they're probably a 3 to a 6 bid league. Their absolute ceiling could go up, and their floor could come up if teams start to play well. I think one of the things that I'll get into a lot on this show specifically is when looking at March Madness and looking at conferences and getting to the tournament, what's your floor and what's your ceiling of bids that you have? And right now I think that this is a 3-team to 6-team floor to ceiling. That ceilings can go up and ceilings can go down, and floors can go up and floors can go down. And we'll see where the ACC is after a week or two, and we start to see them play in some of the non-conference. Player of the year in the ACC, to me, is obvious. I think it's going to be RJ Davis. I think it's his year. He's the most experienced player. He's the best scorer. He is an incredible college guard. Who knows where his pro career will take him, but I think this is his year. I think he can lead the Tar Heels to... He could lead the Tar Heels to winning this conference. There's no doubt in my mind. And I think he will be the most outstanding player in the ACC. Watch out for Cooper Flagg. I think he's got a real-life chance to do it. It would be fun to see a guy like Hunter Salas go do it. But give me RJ Davis for a Conference Player of the Year. The overall winner, give me the Tar Heels to win the conference tournament with their experience, with their ability, with their coaching staff. They've had some disappointing years the last couple, but this, to me, I think is North Carolina's year. If RJ Davis can carry them, give me them to win the tournament. Wouldn't be surprised if it's Duke, though. With that wraps up our predictions for the ACC. We have the 4 other conferences left, and then we start the season Monday, November 4th. I will have an episode out Tuesday, November 5th, recapping the 2 biggest games from the 4th, which are Ohio State, Texas, and Gonzaga, Baylor. This show is going to be less of a podcast during the season and more of a reaction to the biggest games of the day. So I'm always going to find the biggest storylines of the day before. I'm going to talk about them. We're going to talk about what impact it has on those teams. We're going to talk about what impact it has on those conferences. If there's a major upset, we'll talk about it. What does that mean for the team that got upset? What does it mean for the team doing the upsetting? Do we have to keep an eye out on them? So stay tuned. We will have probably not daily episodes. Not every day we'll have monumental games and monumental storylines, but we will have episodes multiple times a week. As long as there's a storyline and as long as there's games that interest me and as long as there are things that happen during the season that I want to talk about, which I know that there's going to because there always is. So check back tomorrow. There should be another episode out tomorrow. I think I'm going to do Big 12 tomorrow. We will preview that conference. I'll give you my top 5. That wraps us up for today, though. Thank you so much for listening to the Double Bonus Show. My name is Jacob. Have a great rest of your day.